Hi, everybody. This is Liz checking it again with the one and only Mike Andes. I had an idea that I wanted to speak to Mike because this is a very important year for Augusta Nation and for Mike Andes. It is his 10th year anniversary as Augusta, and I came on 9 years ago. So last week, if you saw what we posted last week, it was about my experience as an employee being at Augusta for this past 10 years, for the almost a decade. But I had so many thoughts regarding Mike, not only for the 10 years, but also that he just had a birthday and he just turned 29. And so he's almost a 30 on, and then we're at a decade here. So there's lots to go over from the past and bring us up to date. But I had some questions for Mike that might be helpful for some of you to hear. So could you share with us, like just off the top of your head, milestones in the last 10 years? Like what just pops into your head is the biggest things?
Obviously, starting like I think in any home services, like going full time is a big step. So 10 years ago, I started. I went full time after year one. So that took me from like 30,000 a month, 30,000 annual revenue to like 200,000 almost, just by going full time. And then there's like milestones of you hire your first employee, which I did in that second year as well, and then usually like if I look back, it's probably like 5 years ago we started franchising, and then a year and a half ago we started a CoPilot. So those are probably like the three, and then kind of in between years 2 and 5 is when I got stuck underneath the dump truck, and kind of like changed my thought process and having systems in the business and focusing on that aspect and then sharing that with the public.
Fantastic. So, over that time, there's been multiple things that happen that people probably do not know about. And I will name some of these and you can expound on them. So, from these 10 years, throughout these 10 years, you've written 4 books. Can you tell us what each of them are about? And I know some of them you don't even want to mention because things have changed, but just for our listeners' enjoyment.
Yes, like there's one book we wrote called Local Leaders. It was basically my way to kind of like network with some of the top entrepreneurs locally in our area. So it just kind of like went through like 6 or 7 different brands that to our area is kind of our bigger deal. But being able to talk with them, they open up some doors to other people, and just to be able to get to know them in person is kind of cool. We don't have like a super like tech scene in this area, so just getting to know other entrepreneurs is cool. That was Local Leaders. I did Millennial Millionaire, which is kind of like my story from probably age zero to um, 22, 23. Kind of that story and starting Augusta. And then I wrote Zero Turn, which is kind of the story of the hypothetical story of Larry, who was actually a real person locally, who ran a lawn care business, and kind of how we helped him turn his business around. And then more recently, the Total Business Turnaround. Probably the first book I would say is my real first book, because I wrote every word of it and like really spent time on it. The other ones it's not like I rushed them. I guess I wrote Pay for
I was
Performance
just
too.
going to say there's another one we missed
P for
here.
P. Yeah, so that one I spent more time on too, but it's much more of a textbook, kind of like how to, very a little more dry. Whereas the turnaround book was, I really try to create that and craft that in a way that would stand the test of time. So yeah, those are like I guess 4 or 5 books that I wrote, but I would say like the turnaround book, in my opinion, is probably the first book I really wrote.
He's the only one he's claiming, folks, is that one. Well, there was something else that people know a lot about that started very elementary, and that is the landscape business course. So tell us how you got the idea to do that and how we started recording it, kind of what that looked like.
Yeah, so when I very at the very beginning when I first started Augusta, I still remember sitting in my upstairs in my room. I would have been 17, 18 years old, kind of in that decision making process of whether or not I was going to drop out of medical school. And so I remember searching landscape business course. I literally remember exactly where I was sitting at my window with my laptop or a desktop and searching landscape business course, and there really wasn't anything. There was several online courses from universities. It was much more about like landscape architecture, landscape design, but it wasn't like the business side. And so now, fortunately, there are more influencers that have created courses and things like that, but there really wasn't anything at the time. So a few years later, once I got stuck underneath the dump truck, realized my business didn't have systems, and started the process of turning all of that around, instituting pay for performance, having estimate videos, just creating more systems in the business. That's when I went back and checked, and sure enough, landscapebusinesscourse.com was available. And so 3 weeks after I got out of the hospital from the event with the dump truck and kind of almost dying there, I realized that was kind of my thing, was going to be sharing and documenting the process of turning around my own business using systems. And so, yeah, the first landscape business course videos were shot several weeks after that. You can still see on a lot of those videos, like kind of like my lacerations on my neck, because they were still kind of fresh and they'd get overheated during filming and have to take breaks.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was kind of the evolution of landscape business course. It started as that, and if you look way back in my YouTube videos, it'd be like, hey, this is Mike Andes from Landscape Business Course, and then I'd start my usual videos and I just share about what I was learning and as we grew the business. And a lot of times I'd come in and be dirty and sweaty and making the videos, but just kind of trying to document for other people so they wouldn't have to go through those first few years of pain when they were starting their business.
So, those of you that watch a lot of Mike's content, when you see the drone shot that's shown quite a bit with the small little red building and all the different product bins, that's where that was. That's where the accident happened in the dump truck. It wasn't on that property, but it was from there. And then from there is where Mike filmed. So, this, how many square feet was this building? It was very small.
Tiny.
So there was this one area where I was on the computer, and then all of our customers would come in, all the crew would come in, and we put this little area together for Mike to film. We brought a tree from home, a plant from home. And when a business owner, those of you who know when it's crazy busy all the time, you got the crews running, Mike would put a white shirt on and film or do a video, and then he'd put on his Augusta shirt and when boots when the crews were coming out, and then he would throw on an Anytime Fitness shirt to go and do his meetings at Anytime Fitness, which he still does all this today. But he was saying about it was hot and dirty, and he was still doing that to have the professionalism and differentiating between everything else. But before that, you did a lot of content. So, when and why did you feel like you needed to start creating any kind of content being so young and not having tons of experience yet? Why would you think you needed to do that?
So I only really started creating the content right when I was after the accident. I had done a couple videos I think beforehand, just kind of like exemplifying some of the work we were doing, kind of doing a kind of vlog style of each month we'd release a video of like lots of projects we were doing at Augusta. But I had never really done instructional or business content, mostly because like I didn't know what I was doing myself. I was trying to figure out those first few years and stumbling my way through Facebook ads and every door direct mail and postcards and the whole 9 yards. So once the accident happened, I realized that like, okay, I thought I was doing pretty good. I now realize that I don't have a business that can run without me. And so if I feel that way, I bet there's a lot of other people who would help if they learned the process that I'm going to have to change to make this business run without me. And so, fast forward to today, like both of my locations for Augusta Lawn Care run profitably without me ever being there. I'm never there. I haven't even been to one of the locations in terms of their physical spot, and it's because of those systems. And so, if the reason that Landscape Business started was to be able to give those to the public, and hopefully, like literally prevent, idealistically, someone getting underneath a dump truck because they didn't have systems and getting hurt and injured like I did. And for many people, that would have put them out of business, probably bankrupt. And fortunately, I had people like you to keep the business in operation, but not everyone's so lucky.
Yeah. So I remember though, when you were in that little tiny place that you talked about, 200 square feet in a little studio upstairs, that you were had a little whiteboard and you would stand there by your kitchen counter and put some things on the whiteboard. Now, was that before that time?
That was right after. So like I,
Okay.
yeah, right after that is when. So I was still living with my parents when I actually got injured. It's once I got that little place on H Street, moved up the stairs above the garage, and then I had like about 2.5, 3 feet between my kitchen cabinets and then that
Mhm.
wall. And so it looks like I'm in a big, or I'm in a room, but realistically, I have the lights with the cabinets open so I could put some lights up inside of the cabinets. I had nothing inside the cabinets. There's lights coming down on me. And they're like these big halogen lights that would kind of flip off the breaker downstairs, which would be annoying because I'd lose all my footage. Anyways, that was afterwards, like right around that same period of time we moved, and then I started creating content more regularly about 3 to 6 months after the accident.
Okay, so that would help people have a little bit of timeline because they would see landscape business course being filmed and then they would see these other videos that you had made. So you're saying you made those from your studio in the same time period.
Yeah, really the content, like I can, so it was August 4th, 2016 that I got in the accident. It's also the day that Millennial Millionaire got published on Amazon. And so I think it was a couple months later we moved to the spot you're mentioning. So that's when a lot of the content started getting started. So a lot of
Hmm.
my early videos are in that upper room above the garage,
Hmm.
but it's because that was just happened several months after.
Yeah, when you're first starting out, a lot of times you try stuff and it fails. And I wouldn't even call it a failure so much. But do you remember that you actually hired a media crew to come and help you? Can you
Yeah,
tell us
yeah.
a little bit about that and how you decided they weren't
Yeah.
going to work
So like
out?
at the time, it was like a lot of money to me, and that was like $3,000 to come shoot me for over the course of several days. For landscape business course, and I think he just bit off more than he can chew. Like in hindsight, I look back, I'm like, there's no way he could actually do a good job for $3,000. Like he should have charged me $3,000 just to film it. Well, he filmed it, and then was supposed to start editing the videos, and got like one or two out of like 30 done, and was taking like weeks on every video. I'm like, this is going to take us like a year just to do post production, like edit. And so that's when I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it myself. I had already edited videos and made apps and stuff like that throughout college, so I was decent at like Final Cut Pro. So I ended up just like locking in for I think like 2 or 3 weeks, as much as I possibly could, and just like edited all the videos from start to finish. And then, yeah, that was landscape business course.
Yeah, so you're pretty adaptable. I think they call that failure way forward, failure
Yeah,
way to
well,
success.
in his defense, although I was mad at the time because like $3,000 to me at the time was a lot of money.
Right.
There's just no way he could have actually have done that. He would have ended up making like $10 an hour. It took a long time to edit.
Hmm. I think it would be really good for people to hear. They look at us now, and we've had them at conference and say, "Oh, how do you find a Liz or whatever?" But every business owner has a little bit of that fear and bringing somebody on and the pain of it. They're busy, they're swamped, and then they have to bring this person on. They don't know if they're going to work out. Can you tell me what was that like from a business point of view, bringing somebody who was really raw talent into the business?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, like the ability to trust the person is the most important thing. Um, when you're first getting started, it's not like you need someone that has skills that you don't. Most of the time, it's actually just someone that you can trust to delegate work to, and you could probably do the work the same, if not better, yourself. But just to be able to trust them that they're going to actually be looking out for you, looking out for the best interest of the business, looking out for the best interest of the customers and the employees, and like on your side is the most important part. As time goes on, like more recently, the talent that I've been getting is like these are people that are doing things that I cannot do. They're
Hmm.
skills I do not have. And at the time when I hired you, I could have answered the phone. I could have done the emails. I could have
Hmm.
done those things. And at the time, I would say I would probably have done them better than you
Hmm.
in terms of in that moment. But it was important to have someone that you can fully trust. And I knew you wanted me to win. You were invested in the business and making sure we succeeded. And at the time, I really didn't have the vision I do have now in terms of
Hmm.
when you first got started. It was like, hey, we're just going to build this business and like,
Hmm.
make money, and really just focus on our local area. It was a few years later, started, okay, like how do we help other people? And then it started developing, okay, we got a franchise because no one's listening. And then it kind of built from there. And so now when I'm hiring talent, it is much more like, here's the vision, this massive, huge goal. Like it's going to take this, and this to get there. And like, you want to join the ride. For you, it was very much more like I trusted you. I felt like you could make more money with my company than where you were currently working, and I knew your skills were underutilized at the time, and so yeah.
Well, we are family, and I know a lot of people could never work with their family, and even us, we could probably work with some of our family, but not all of our family. So, do you recommend that people work with a family member, or do you think that's just taking on too much risk and they shouldn't go there?
Yeah, I'd say just like know what is most important, either your family or the business in the relationship. Like as soon as you mix the two, just realize that eventually you'll have to have a reckoning with like which one's most important. And it's not a matter of which one's the most important; it's to which one's going to win in the event that you have to make a decision between the two. And
Hmm.
so I think you know any family dynamic I've seen that has worked well, they can either a turn off and on being a family person, like a family member versus a business partner and employee boss, or they just completely relegate one side or the other. It's like, hey, you're
Right.
my boss, and like so. I feel like we've always had struggles at points and times, but in general, we're like, hey, the business is the most important thing. Like, if we disagree on family stuff or personal stuff, like that's going to take a sideline to the fact that like why we're doing this and we're in it for the long haul together. And so that just has to kind of take priority. It's not easy in any relationship, and I've hired multiple people that I either know personally or family, et cetera, and it's never easy. And then there's other times where you make calls and you're like, it's business wise doesn't make any sense, but you're doing it because you value the personal relationship and the family relationship more.
Yeah, that's a tricky one for most people. So I counted up all these different businesses that you've started, worked on, or currently do, and there's some I couldn't remember the exact name of it. But and this won't be the exact order, but you could have forgotten some anyway. So we had one business called Ketosis Cups, which was fantastically good, all you people, for us getting to test these with Charity, our in-house chef, and it came to a screeching halt when.
When COVID happened, because we had all the trade shows planned, and so we ended up shipping out like I think like 20 or 30,000 orders. But then as soon as COVID hit, we had to stop all of our trade show stuff. But I'm so thankful. Like we just need to focus. At that time, I still had a lot of I still wasn't fully committed. It wasn't a matter of like not being committed. It was a matter of like thinking that I needed to diversify, and like
Mhm.
that's just a bunch of garbage. I just need to go all in on this thing that I love. And so I was trying to fill in like honestly the winter gap. So like I was trying to keep the crew busy. We do production of like literally food, so it was insane. And yes, there's a whole other list of others that you could like embarrass me if you really wanted to, or just read the book. I tell all in the turnaround book. It's a chapter where it says you run your business like a side hustle. I think it's
Yeah.
chapter 8 or 9.
Well, the other one is BioShakes. And BioShakes is what you ran with. You built this with somebody in your class of college, right?
Nav. Yeah, his name was
Nav.
Nav.
And this went how far before it bit the dust?
So we had manufacturers out in Corona, California that were helping us build the machine. It was basically you'd put powderized whey protein into the machine, and then you would dispense liquidified, whey protein shakes. So we had this massive like 27-inch screen on the vendor or on the uh, what is it called vending machine, and you choose the flavor you wanted, the size you wanted, whatever, and then it spit it out. So we ended up kind of getting in trouble with Coca-Cola's trademark infringement stuff. So we tried to get around it once, and then they came back to us again, and we were like, okay, we do not have the money or the time or the energy. At the time, I just started Augusta, so it was really like a kind of a class project in my MBA program. So I just canned that too,
But it was
along with
really legit, actually. You had contracts in gyms already, right?
yeah, it's a matter of like whether or not an idea is good or not is irrelevant because there's a lot of good ideas, but you need to execute on something. So I had a good thing going with Augusta, and I just kept getting distracted at the beginning there, mostly because I was trying to fill in the whole of winter, um, and trying to diversify somewhat, but it was needless. I just need to
Think
focus
about
on
it,
my own
people,
business.
being at the gym and being able to put it in, just push it in, just like you're at a
Oh
Taco
yeah, it's a
Bell
good
or
idea.
something.
There's a couple companies that are kind of doing it now, but
Could have been something. And then you had a protein bar that you
oh
designed
yeah,
and made very
charge
yummy
bar.
at
Let's
home.
go.
And then you tried to go from business to business and get them to buy into Mike Andy's protein bar.
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
supposedly someone at Command Center said the other day they worked at like Burger King or McDonald's, and I supposedly went in there too. This was way back. This is like when I was 14, maybe 15.
Back in the
Um,
day.
so there's this charge bar, and then I created charge ice cream, and actually like created it, had everything designed, took it into Hagen's, which is like a local grocery store.
You're
Um,
so brave. Way to
and
go.
that's how I met like Wes Herman, owner of
Yep.
Woods Coffee, back when I was like 13, trying to pitch him on Charge Bar. So
And he
I
still
definitely,
remembers this young guy coming in.
I can't believe it. It's so stupid. I literally came in with Tupperware containers, being like, "Yo." So, anyways,
That is a true entrepreneurial people. And then Anytime Fitness. Why did you even get interested? Why do you own that? And you still own it today.
Yeah, so that was when I thought you were going to go into reset mind and body there for a
Oh, we're
second.
going to
But
get there.
okay. So Anytime Fitness, yeah, that one I still have it today, and it's really helpful to learn the franchising model. So went there for their week of training in Minnesota. And learned from that. And that was like the summer before we franchised Augusta. So learning how they do it, how they have everything set up, how they have their academy, and like a lot of what we do at Augusta is modeled after them. So like our dashboard, our academy, our flat fees, our coaching program, like our monthly metrics is almost all what Anytime Fitness
Wow.
does. And then I learned a lot of what like franchisees didn't like about what they were doing, especially around COVID, how they handled communications, and just tried to like adapt to that and hopefully take the best of both worlds.
Yeah, so tell us about Reset.
Yeah, so reset mind and body. Here we go. So that was probably my most expensive failure
No kidding.
because I signed a 5-year lease in like a really prime location. So it was like 2021 coming out of COVID. And I was like, you know what? There needs to be a place where people can go 24/7 and just like,
Chill.
chill out. And like, so there was like ice baths, float tanks, red light therapies, saunas, yoga.
Waterfalls.
Yeah, waterfall coming off. Yeah. So it was pretty intense. But I signed a lease for this facility. It was relatively small. It was only like 2,500 or 3,000 square feet, but it was a raw shell. It had just been built. It was prime construction, like right on the main drag. Signed a 5-year lease and then created the plans with the contractor, submitted those to the city, then realized that this would be an absolute pain in the neck to get it to be compliant for a 24/7 facility when you have like ice baths and saunas and like all this stuff. So yeah, again, same thing. As much as I am dumb, I do realize when like this is going to take way too much time and energy, and so I canned that one as well. Thank goodness.
So, people, make sure you listen when Mike tells you things from his own experience and his mistakes. It will save you hundreds of thousands of dollars for sure.
Basically, now if it's not in home services, it's canned. Like now, it doesn't even like I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm like, cool. Like someone else will do it.
So, there's this concept of P for P that is, it's not new. The concept is not new. But why did you think that you needed to promote this? And what is it exactly? And what have you done with this concept?
Yeah, so P for P is basically pay for performance. It's a way to pay employees by a percentage of their labor revenue instead of an hourly rate. So essentially, the harder they work, the more money they can make. And it was what I always wanted to be able to pay the guys because there were people that were getting paid $1 or $2 more per hour and producing twice as much revenue and profit for the business. And so I just didn't think that was fair. And it wasn't fair that the people who made the most money was simply the ones who asked for raises versus the people that just put their head down, worked crazy hard, and like because they didn't ask and I didn't have the money, they didn't get a raise. And so that's really how it was born. And then it became the software, then it became the book, became the course. That's all free for people. And I really do hope and believe that like down the road, it'll be like the go-to way of paying laborers is based upon their contribution instead of just time.
And now that is integrating with CoPilot now.
It is, yeah.
So you mentioned about an app earlier. Did you write an app for Apple or something?
Yeah, it's called 30X. So it's basically 30-minute long workouts. I did 20 workouts. I created an app called 30X. And I also created an app called 8-Minute Apps, which got downloaded quite a bit. And I recorded all the videos, made an app out of it for iOS and Android. Once it hit iOS 7 is when I stopped updating because the code base changed a lot in Xcode. And I just had fell behind on the coding because I started focusing a lot more on pre-med. So that's when I ended up taking them off the App Store. But
I need to tell
yeah.
your CoPilot team about that. They don't know these things.
I think they might. It helps me a little bit sometimes to know a little bit what they're talking about, but I'm like so far behind the curve in terms of tech.
So did you make any money on this app?
Yeah, on 30X, a little bit. Yeah, I think I did like a paid version or something. I made a little bit of money.
That's
Nothing to
so
write
cool.
home about, but
Now, people, when he did this 30 whatever PX
30X.
filming, you had friends to be the
Yes.
models with you.
Yes.
And this is such a bad move, but I remember Mike buying them all their workout wear
And then we just returned it
and then
afterwards.
returned it after we filmed everything. And
Yep.
I think, did you even leave the tags on what they were wearing?
I left it on mine. I don't know what they did for theirs. But at the time spending $1,000 on clothes was not in the budget. So I went to like Nike, Puma, and several other outlet stores, and then just like got all the stuff, and then I just kept organized all of it, and then took it all back in tranches. It was great.
People, this is legit. You should look it up online and see if you can find some of these workouts. It'll be highly entertaining, but
Some of them they're still on YouTube. They're still on
see,
YouTube.
there you go. 30X people, look it up and see Mike Andy's teaching his fitness classes. So can't say he never did anything. Okay, so CoPilot CRM. Actually, first we should go to the franchise. Why did you think you needed to start a franchise?
Yeah, so like with landscape business course, I just was always pretty disheartened because people would like theorize that I was correct on things like pay for performance or like doing certain systems, but they never really implemented it. Mostly because they kind of looked at me as an outside consultant, and so I really wanted to help the industry, but I knew that just by creating content alone, I wasn't going to be able to do it. So I figured if we can compete with people. In their local market, they'll start to listen to the content and hopefully start implementing it because they have to, because customers are changing their expectations. Customers start to expect the phone to be answered 24/7. They start to expect automations and credit cards on file and employees that are uniformed and professional and trucks that are wrapped. And so I figured if we can get 1,000 of those locations, that we'd have a meaningful impact on most of the industry because we'd be competing with most landscapers. And so that's really the goal. And once I realized I was going to franchise, I was like, oh, snap, like it's going to be a much longer game. And that's when everything kind of locked down. So everything else started getting cut in terms of what I was focusing on and other ventures and stuff like that. Just needed to focus on that.
I remember your massive frustration when you would be on the phone and give people advice and they wouldn't implement it. You would be so frustrated. You say if they would just implement it, they would be successful. So if we actually created systems and had them buy into the systems, then they would have to follow the systems and therefore they would be successful. But I remember the one hangup was that we did not want to charge a royalty. And what did your lawyer say when you brought that to him?
Okay, so a couple points. So first is it wasn't my current lawyer that did
Okay,
this. It was
okay.
other lawyers that I had
You
talked to
would,
and consultants that said not to do the flat fee model. Their reasoning was sound in that it's like, hey, if the franchisee is succeeding, then you make more money.
mhm.
And I think that is conceptually makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is when I talked to more than 50 franchisees, the people who were most complaining were the ones that were actually making the most money because they had to pay the most more money in
Right.
royalties, and they needed the franchisor the least. At the very beginning, when you're making the least amount of revenue, paying the least amount of royalties, you're getting the most help from the franchisor. And I wanted to incentivize people to grow a business that was above $1 million because that's where I believe you need to build to in order to be able to run the business without you being daily operations. And so I didn't think it was right. If I was going to be telling people to grow, that I was being incentivized based upon their growth. I wanted to be incentivized based upon running a sustainable business that would provide for their family. They didn't have to go into debt. They didn't have to leverage themselves out or do things that were short-term interest of growth of revenue, and then think that when I was trying to increase their revenue, I was trying to get more money from them. I just want it to be like, hey, you pay to be in this thing, and I will continue to provide value consistently, and I want you to make as much money as possible, be in business as long as possible, and I wanted those to be my KPIs as for making money off someone versus just growing top line revenue, because that means I can be making a bunch of money and they're losing money every single month, and I just don't think it's a long-term great solution.
I think one thing that is different and that kind of stands out about you and I is that we've worked with different softwares and helped them by giving them feedback and them designing it. And we don't get discouraged by things that happened so much in software because we keep the in vision in mind and we're more gracious as people have bugs and are building. And what I'm getting at is Lawn Pro, we work directly with the owner. And I remember that you would help him and work with him, and we would be stuck in the middle of preparing routes and things, and we were able to text him. So you're texting the founder of this company while he builds it. Do you think that those early years of having that kind of involvement with somebody has impacted you with what you're doing today?
Yeah, maybe to some extent. Like building that relationship was really important with Patrick. There was a time I flew down there on a whim for like less than 24 hours just to help him out with some stuff and kind of build that relationship. And he implemented what we had talked about, and within a year, and more than doubled, almost tripled the revenue just by switching to a subscription model instead of a lifetime fee model. And so, at the time, there was really not a lot of incentive for me to do that. Other than that, we did. He did start to sell Landscape Business Course as an affiliate on Lawn Pro, so
Mhm.
there was a little bit of incentive there, just to clarify. But there wasn't like a ton. Like I probably didn't make back my, plane ticket.
Mhm.
But I would say, yeah, like that's what definitely I would say like led the foundation to when the conversation come up about, hey, we want to do this thing, take this and do it on our own. And I think we can, in the long term, do something special. Is definitely because that relationship had started and been fostered over the course of time, and given him feedback and tried to help as much as I could. And in turn, had a really really good relationship as co-founder of CoPilot, and then recently I bought him out to serve his interest, kind of different stage of his career. So
Mhm. And I remember that a lawn pro wouldn't route any more than 23 jobs. So at a certain point, there was just that was in a day. And after that, we just had so many mows, we had to move on to Service Autopilot. When we moved into Service Autopilot, they're still building everything. And so we could give feedback. And I remember Mike and I asked for to dos to be routed in with jobs. And that took a long time to get done, but they would take it before their roundtable, they said, and make a decision on it. So we saw so much with Service Autopilot as they grew, and we worked with them. And in every software, there's issues and glitches and bugs, but we knew that a lot of times it was user error. I found out 90% of the time it was me messing up. And so we now have Copilot. And why did you think you needed Copilot when all these different softwares do some of the things we wanted? Was it that you were viewing all of these and they didn't have all that a business owner would need to really run their business well?
yeah, like it was just a more matter of two things. One, a version of Service Alpha was promised like 7 years ago, and it still hasn't been released today. And it really just shows like the stagnation of that product. And nothing against them. I'm a huge fan of a lot of the people that were there. Most of them have been let go or have moved on from the company. But you know, there just hasn't been any innovation. And so if I realized that if like we were going to be on the cutting edge at Augusta, we had to take control of our technology. And if I was going to actually help business owners and create tools for them, I need to actually be able to control something. Because like when I talk about things like follow-up phone calls or one-click estimate emails or upsells, like I can talk about that all I want, but if I can create a tool for them to be able to actually click with one button from a job to do upsells to customers, it adds way more value to the consumer. Because it's not just like, here's how you do it. It's like, no, like, this is exactly like the recipe, just go do it. Like, just go, here's the tool. And so instead of theorizing about upsells, I can say, hey, go use this feature and click on this button and do this. And so that was in part why we figured we needed to do it is number one, I needed to protect the interest long term of Augusta, and that was that we had control of a product that we could control the features, we could also control the pricing and the vision of the company because I saw that stall out a few years ago once the founder left, and so that was concerning to me in that we were so closely aligned with them. Every single day we were using dozens of people here at Command Center, all 100 plus franchisees. Like we're depending on this tool, and for that cost to be have more than doubled over the past several years, and we don't see a lot in return, was concerning. And
Mhm.
so when I look at the cost for a franchisee at Augusta, for someone that now would say join and need the automations required to be able to run at Command Center, it's like, well, now in order to join, you're looking at like $700-800 per month for a software package, and our monthly fees for your first year at Augusta is $600 a month. So like it was such a huge jump for entry level operators. I had to really consider consider the fact that this is going to be actually a detriment, like a hurdle for us to be able to grow the franchise. But more importantly, it was I just I wanted to have a control of a product that I could create tools that people could use. And when I talked about certain elements and systems in the business, I could actually have a tool for them to use. So I
Mm-hmm.
talk about deposit thresholds, like get 50% down. Instead of just saying go get 50% down, I could be like, in CoPilot, go to this feature and click this button, and immediately before a job gets accepted, they'll have to put 50% down deposit, down payment before you even accept the job. Like that's like the genesis of it. And the past year has been pretty kind of tough in terms of the bugs and things once we had so many people join. So I've learned a lot from that, and got some really capable people to prevent that from happening in the future. But ultimately, that's like the vision, the goal of it.
Hmm. Well, most of us just do with what we have. And so when we started the franchise, there was nothing in our wildest imagination about creating our own. So every system we built for Augusta was from our workarounds in Service Autopilot. We made it work. We taught that to the franchisees. And so now that we've started Copilot, we were basically pushed to that point where you're almost forced to be able to serve your clientele properly. And that's what you've had to do. And it is, I think you knew what you were getting into, and it's just never easy and it's outrageously expensive. And you've had to put your own money and blood, sweat, and tears into this. And now you're making headway. And I find it very commendable that you saw that now you bumped up against your limits and brought people that had more skill in for you now. So, how are you feeling as of this day at the end of September 2024 about Copilot? Do you feel hopeful?
Yeah, like I would say this past month is the first time I felt that way for the past 9 months. Like obviously, I made some missteps in terms of having all of Augusta join the same time where we tripled, like same month that we tripled users, and it just broke everything. Like literally every single thing broke. So I'm gonna talk about more at conference once it's a little bit more behind us because we're still kind of just coming out of it. But like over the next 4 months, people are going to see what happens, and I know that because now they'll actually see the front end. Like a lot of the back end stuff has been done to prevent like catastrophic issues again, but now the front end stuff will be like starting to deliver on the roadmap, and it'll become very clear that like what we're doing is the right move, but it's really a result of all the actions we've taken over the past 9 months. And so like literally 100% of the credit goes to the team, the very high skilled level people coming on, that like believe in the vision and what we're trying to do and see the gap in the market, and where we can kind of exploit that. And we really think that we can, when robotics come along, that we will have the perfect intersection of software, hardware, and then distribution with the franchise and command center to be able to take full ownership of that market.
Hmm. A lot of things that have happened are because you have this care and concern for people, and then you start the franchise, but then there's another need that needs to be fulfilled, and you started this massive thing called the command center. Why did you think you need that, and what was the purpose?
Yeah, at the beginning of starting a business, like you have enough on your plate already. You're trying to figure out how to do so many different things, and so I knew if we can get someone past 500,000 annual revenue, the likelihood of them failing is extremely low. And so the fastest way to get them there is for them to focus on sales. And so if they're not focused on sales, they're focused on things other than sales, including answering their phone, doing their email, checking their text messages, running payroll, sending out estimates, a whole litany of other things that are admin related. And so admin is a very defensive measure that's required for the business, yet it will not get them past 500,000. And so my goal with command center is like get them past that stage as fast as possible. And kind of like stage 2, V2 of command center as we go forward is like, how do we make it where even past 500,000, they never have to hire any sort of admin staff. And that'll take us a few years to kind of nail down, to be able to scale command center in a way that people that are doing millions of dollars in revenue or have a bunch of locations, it's still more economically viable for them to have just command center handle things. But really the focus is how do we get them to scale past 500,000 as quickly as possible, because the likelihood of success is so much higher after that point.
What is your vision for command center?
Yeah, it's like when we think about, the more short-term future, it's much more how do we go from more of admin to sales and HR. So it is selling over the phone, it is assisting Max AI in selling more jobs. It is how do we hire employees for the franchisees, and vet them, onboard them, train them prior to them showing up for their first day. That's probably like next few years. When we look way down the road, it is going to be the kind of back end infrastructure required to run a robotic fleet
Hmm.
of workers and tech enabled workers that have a couple of robots with them, and then they're on their truck working, doing the finer work that a robot can't do. And so those robots will be likely in part operated by Command Center and maintained from Command Center. And so there's already command centers I have looked at that are doing this with robotics, but the people behind the computers are engineers. And the reason for that is because they're operating very, very complex software. And so I believe the company that will take a huge part of the market share when robotics comes along will be the company that has not only the hardware, which is a lot of companies have done a great job of like innovating this space and startups and creating the actual robots, but then the software is the part that needs to be simplified enough to where it's actually user friendly. And so that's when Command Center can step in and actually we can have people that don't have to be computer software engineers to be able to run the software required to maintain these, do their initial scans on property with using LiDAR, et cetera. And then interface with the technicians in terms of problems that might happen on the job site. And then that alongside having that infrastructure for command center for Augusta, to be able to have the distribution of these robots. So we aren't ordering 10 or 15 or 20 of these, we're ordering thousands of these, driving the cost down low enough, and then being able to have mass amounts of training for command center to be able to use these, fix these, maintain them, scan properties originally, give pricing, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that's the company that will win, is the one that has
Hmm.
all three of those things. I think there's some really good hardware companies, there's some really good software companies, and then there's like good media and marketing companies. And so I
Hmm.
think if we take all three, though, we create this thing that will be really hard to compete with, and we'll be able to take a really good market share when that technology catches up. And I think we're still a solid 10 to 20 years away before robotics plays a meaningful role and is cost effective enough.
There's so much more that we'll cover up in the future because there's so many things we have planned and that we're going to be doing next year. But there's one other aspect of what you do, and that is the real estate element. And why did you feel like you needed to get into real estate in the first place?
Yes, like in the 7 stages of wealth for Augusta, number 7 is diversification. And even though I know I want to do business forever, and I think I'll get the best returns from spending my money on my businesses. There are people that want to have one or two locations. They want to build $1 million business. They want to run it by itself, and then they want to take that money as profits and do it in a more tax sheltered, a tax efficient way of investment, and it can be real estate or other businesses, et cetera. And so that was in part why. Other part was like I just saw where the market was at. I knew that it was going to about to rip, so we purchased 23 units in between 2020 and 2021, and have since sold off 10 of those, so we can basically afford the headquarter building. So it was a way for kind of fund the growth of Augusta as we were losing money, and has also served same thing with CoPilot. And yeah, all the property's gone up in value a lot. I also learned a lot too, which is helpful
Hmm.
to just like mentor the franchisees when it comes to like their loans that they get for their house or like their shop space or like how do I do leases and what's triple net mean, and like I got my real estate license, so I can help them with a lot of these things too, which is just valuable in general for them.
Yeah, and also a lot of the things we do is to test, document, and be able to share that with the franchisees in case they want to do it as well. So you've had Airbnbs, you had a tiny house, and those are things that we did for a while, learned a lot from that, are also able to share that with them. So just wrapping up on all those companies, what are some mistakes you've made that you feel like you can pass on to the audience that you would have done differently so that they don't make these same mistakes? I know that big projects was one thing we took away. I don't know if we'd call it a mistake, but it's something we definitely learned that we shouldn't have done.
Yeah, like I think as I grow and learn more, like hindsight is 2020. So because of that, when you look back, it's only once you've learned the answer to the question that you look back and the question seems either like super simple, or you see the fault of your ways. So sometimes when it's sometimes easy to think that you're perfect in the short term when you look back, but when you start gaining more skills and experience, you start looking back a little further and you start like, oh, I should have done that differently. That was dumb.
Mhm.
And so it also, as your business grows, like the right and wrong answers become different. So I think as you grow from 0 to a million, really the focus is doing more of the work. Like just focusing on just grinding and hustling and doing more is probably the unlock. And so if I was thinking back to that stage, if I would just worked harder and longer and slept less, I probably would have grown the business faster. If I would have focused and not done things like reset mind and body or the shake thing or ketosis cups, I probably would have just done better if I would have just focused and just like worked harder on that one thing. From 1 million to 10 million, like it was really like you got to be a great manager, like figuring out how to like curb certain like personality traits that you have, to be able to manage people more effectively, get them to be able to be a successful. That's probably like the trait, and then like the thing that I'm like now having to figure out to go beyond that, and I think that'll probably serve me well from like 10 million to 100 million is probably like recruitment, like getting people that are just vastly more skilled than I in so many different areas, and tapping into their years of experience and then pulling them in and having a vision large enough for them to fit their dreams and goals inside of. And then become more confident and clear in what that vision is, and more confident in the ability to be able to hit those benchmarks. And it's like crazy. Like even this morning, that you're talking to it was 20 something engineers on the
Mm-hmm.
call, and like every single one of those people are extremely skilled, beyond what I could ever be in terms of that domain. And so, how do you harness that kind of horsepower, manpower towards something really cool, and have clear vision and clear leadership? Like, there is no room for missteps in terms of financially. There's no room for missteps of like me getting deterred into some sort of
Mm-hmm.
detour, like a random business venture. Like, you have clarity. It's more about what you say no to than what you say yes to, because you have to stay focused, and realizing that um, like leadership at this level is really important. And because like I will not be able to outwork and do all the work required, and I can work 24/7 and will not put a dent in the workload that's required. And so it's a matter of how do we lead, how do we get the most out of the team and get them to their next level of their career. And focusing on that is kind of like my current unlock that I'm trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So, what about your personal growth over the years, the thought process that you used to have, and now you know that they have changed, like almost like you've turned and went a whole different direction. Are there any things like that that you've changed?
I would say I judge people a little bit less now. Um, so I just think in general, when you do stuff online, people are pretty quick to judge, and they rightfully should. When you're public, I think it's good that there's people that are critical, um, but especially when you have very public mistakes that you made, kind of keeps you humble, and also like slowing down. I think like I was kind of getting there before, but like going from 1 to 10 million, a lot of it is like how fast can you execute, how fast can you adapt, how fast can you change, how fast can you improvise and pivot. And then as you grow, it's like, hey, that's not actually the skill that's required anymore. Now it needs to be more refined, more tested, more streamlined. It's impacting more people, and just doing things in a much more methodical way. And so it's just like the evolution and maturing of an entrepreneur. Like if I looked back 5 years ago, my content, I'd just probably laugh. Like, do you have no idea what you're talking about? Compared to like how I feel today, in terms of just like leadership and decision making, et cetera. So my hope is that in 5 years, I look back on what I did now and think the same way. And that would
Mhm.
mean that we did the number one core value, which is behind you there on the wall, which is constant improvement. So.
Yeah. There's times in people's lives when they come up to a place and they kind of hit a wall in the way that they've been very successful. There's only so many places you can be successful and do things to where you actually come up to the top in that industry on that topic. And in everything you're doing, you've hired all these people below you, and everything goes up, all the complaints, and you're all alone. And they say it's lonely at the top. And I would see you and you would say, I wish there was somebody I could talk to. Like, I need somebody on my own level or higher that I can actually communicate with. And then this wonderful gift came into your life, which we're so gonna cry, appreciative of. And can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So Dr. Trevor Kashey is the editor of Alex Hormozzi's books and a very good close friend of his and business kind of partner. And so I saw the relationship between them when Alex launched his book, $100 Million Leads, and kind of did some digging to figure out how I could get to Trevor, Dr. Kashey. And so did that and was able to get through, like his wife kind of screens people, et cetera. And so I think I was probably one of, if not the last kind of like student he took on, someone to teach. And so I'm very thankful for that. I really don't really fully know why exactly they took me. He doesn't seem to pick people that are like the biggest and the best, because I know some of his other students. So there's some other criteria I must have hit. I don't know exactly what that is, but I know
Not that
now
you couldn't tell a joke.
yeah. But I was able to refer his wife to a comedian that was new and upcoming, so I might have won some points. But yeah, so like I started doing calls with Dr. Kashey a little over a year ago. And then really the first like couple months was really just like digging through personal stuff, figuring out certain limitations and false beliefs and things that like were holding me back. And then we started digging into conference for last year, and it was kind of a sprint towards the end there. So he was spending a lot of time with me figuring out that, but we kind of crammed because we only had a few weeks to kind of like knock it all out. So then yeah, after conference, he helped me a lot in the framework for the book. I wrote the whole book, but like he helped me a lot with the framework. It really, really helped me give clarity. So actually, there was a good flow to it. And so the last several months, we haven't been able to have communication because he's been working on Alex's next book launch. But I'm looking forward to having him back on the weekly calls with me. And there's a few big hurdles I want to tackle with him and stuff that I've kind of framed up. And I just think that being around someone of his caliber has been helpful to me. And like, I think just like slowed me down a little bit in some areas, be much more methodical, know what I'm doing and what I'm saying, and like words mean a lot of things. And so he's a very deep thinker. He's a very smart person. His IQ is like off the charts and like very, very smart. But he's a good man, and I trust him a lot, and I'm very appreciative for his mentorship, and he's added a lot to my life.
So all of your listeners and all of your viewers and your audience and the franchise have all been vicariously influenced from Dr. Kashey, because you're very giving and transparent, and everything that's been poured into you, it's assimilated through your ideas and what your heart is, and then it's given out to all these people. So I have personally been really impacted by Dr. Kashey, just by what I've learned from what you've learned, and even this past week been able to share with employees at Command Center things that will help them change and be better because of what Dr. Kashey taught us. So in closing, I just want to ask you about one thing you said to me on your birthday. And throughout our whole lives, we're little kids and we have birthday parties, and oh, that was the best birthday ever. But you text me on the night of your birthday and you're like, that was the best birthday I ever had. Why would you say that?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I would just say it was like. So that weekend, Jason Murphy had like 70 or 80 of the owners of Augusta out in Kentucky for a training for Christmas lights, and so it was kind of cool. They were all in a classroom, and so they basically sang "Happy Birthday" to me, which is kind of cool. But yeah, just like a lot of really nice things from people, and obviously this year's been pretty brutal, and like we're on the way out, but there were some really, really low moments there. And so I guess when you've gone through that, when people say nice things, it actually means a little bit more because you haven't heard nice things for a while, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it was just like, it's like a reconfirmation of like why I do what I do, and that people do appreciate it. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way when you work so hard, and when you're not publicly seeing the results that you're working towards, and it doesn't mean that you work any less. Like, you can be crushing it and winning, and the business is growing, everything's going good, and you're still working 12, 14-hour days, but you haven't even pat in your back. But then things are going bad, and it's going to take you 6 to 12 months to fix. You're still having to work 12, 14, 16-hour days, but you have absolutely no evidence of success. And that's what I feel like I've been doing for the past 9 months. And so it still feels like that's way a little bit, but for people to be able to still like even during that time, to be supportive of what I'm trying to do and say those sort of things is it's helpful. It gets me through. So
Yeah. Well, we thank you for your time today. You are a very wanted man, and I appreciate you coming on. And we'll be able to share this with a lot of people, and they get to know you a little better and why you do what you do. And we really appreciate you. I appreciate being able to work with you and for you. And we have a great team, and you're a great leader. So thank you for your time today.
thank you.